What's up, YouTube? Yu-Gi-Oh! Tube here, and I'm going to talk about the fallacy of the sky is falling. Everybody dump your Yu-Gi-Oh! Everybody dump your Yu-Gi-Oh! PSA Graded cards, because guess what? They're not worth anything anymore. Well, that's the big problem, is that people have an issue with Yu-Gi-Oh! PSA cards, and the fact that now, today, on November 30th of 2017, they are not worth as much as they were 6 months ago. What's the deal? What's going on? It's tougher to move stuff in the Yu-Gi-Oh! PSA market. Well, that can happen. Why does that happen? It's simply because the market is now much more saturated than it has been in the past 6 months, year, 2 years. 2 years ago, how many auctions? When you search Yu-Gi-Oh! PSA into eBay, how many auctions are you going to get? Maybe 30, 40, 50. 6 months ago, how many auctions are you going to see if you search again Yu-Gi-Oh! PSA into the eBay search bar? Yeah, maybe 600, 700. Big increase in the supply on the market, right? A lot of options for people. Now all of a sudden people don't have 50 different choices. They have 600 to 700 choices. What are the results when you search in Yu-Gi-Oh! PSA today, November 30th, 2017, at about midnight I'm filming this video? 1,408 results. What does that mean? It means the supply of Yu-Gi-Oh! PSA graded cards are much higher than that of what it was 6 months, a year, 2 years ago. And again, this is going back to my original point. There are now options for people. People can now pick and choose what they want, what grade they want. Well, all of a sudden, back a year ago, people might say, well, there is only one PSA 9. I'm going to buy the PSA 9. Now, you look at a card, you say, oh, now I have options. I have a PSA 10 option, I have a PSA 9 option, I have a PSA 8 option if I want to go real budget. So guys, the sky is not falling on PSA graded Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. We have to keep in mind as well, right in the origination of the PSA graded Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, there was always going to be people, and there is always going to be people, that want to get the card first. That want to get that PSA 10, Pop 1, whatever it is first, because guess what? It's a Pop 1. And, I want that TP7 Fortress Whale. I want that Garma Sword from TP8 Super in PSA 10. I want that Royal Decree. I want the Morphing Jar from Tournament Pack, because guess what? There's only one in there in the world, so I gotta get it. I gotta get my hands on it right away. I gotta get my hands on it first. I'm willing to pay that premium to get my hands on that card first. I'm willing to outpay and beat everybody that I possibly can. There are always going to be those people. But guess what? After that initial rush fades away, the market stabilizes. And that's the key. The market will never, ever continually grow for a long period of time. If it does, it's just a fallacy. It doesn't happen. Every once in a while, you will have peaks. You will have valleys. And I think right now, in November, going on to December of 2017, we are seeing that plateau, that little valley, and it is starting to plateau now, simply because, yes, people are grading Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, random Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, based on the idea of, well, if it comes back at 10, I'm going to list it for 10 times what it's worth as a raw card, as a mint raw card. I'm going to list this $3 card at about $80. Let's list, I think it's an $80 card, because it is a PSA 10, it's the only one in existence. And I will get to pop reports, in my opinion on them, and how I feel like they're a little overrated, actually, in a separate video. That will be coming. Stay tuned for that. But guys, the sky is not falling with PSA Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. Simply, there's a flood on the market, and it gives collectors, buyers, consumers options. There is no longer a monopoly. There is no longer one of this card. There is no longer one seller. There is no longer one trader. There is no longer one buyer of these cards. Now, more than before, more than ever, there's a load of consumers out there looking to buy PSA cards. There are a load of sellers and flippers looking to flip these PSA cards. There are a lot of investors buying, selling, trading these PSA graded Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. But the biggest thing here is we have to manage our expectations. I think the golden days, if you want to call them, basically pricing a card in a PSA 10 30 to 40 times what it's worth as a raw card is crazy. It doesn't happen in sports. It doesn't happen in Pokemon. It doesn't happen in Magic the Gathering. Why should it all of a sudden happen in Yu-Gi-Oh? If you have a $5 card and you get it graded PSA 10, be prepared to let it go if it comes back at 10, $25, $30. $30 for a $5 base raw mint card for a PSA 10, depending on the rarity. There's a lot of variables that go into this, but to expect $30, that's more than fair. To expect $100 or $150 for a $5 raw card in mint is crazy. But again, that's people's decisions. And people can put and list whatever they want to at a certain price. Another thing is, why do people say, well, you know, people are pricing it like crazy, they're overvaluing their product. Let them overvalue their PSA cards. Let me overvalue my PSA cards. Let anyone else overvalue whatever cards they have. If they don't want to get rid of it, it won't go. If the price is too high, it won't go. Why is there a need to complain about PSA graded cards that are too expensive? The guy has it, but he's listing it too expensive. Well, guess what? If you wait long enough, maybe there'll be another guy out there that's going to sell it at a price point that you think is fair. But at the end of the day, it's the seller and the seller's price, the seller's item. No issues. If you want to overprice, if you want to list it, and if I want to pay more for it, if I want to splurge, and if I want to buy it because I want it, then I have the freedom to do that. And if he or she, as the seller, says, you know, this is the lowest I can do, then that's the game. I mean, that's part of the game. And if you have the money, and if you think that you know you're going to overspend, but you really want it, go ahead and buy it. That's what a free market is. A free market is where there are buyers and sellers and demand and supply. And, you know, basically when someone wants a card and they're willing to spend what they're willing to pay for it, that's what it's worth. That, at the end of the day, that's what it's worth. That was a little sidetrack. But, having said that, guys, we have to manage our expectations. We can no longer have the days where, well, you know, this is going to come back at 10 and I'm going to sell it for $100 just because it's a 10. I don't care how much it's worth regularly, but because I put money into it, it's a 10. It's going to be worth a lot of money. No, it doesn't work like that anymore. Why are DDS Blue Eyes all of a sudden $800 to $1,000 when maybe a year or two ago, maybe 2 years ago, they were hitting like $2,000? Simply because people got their fix. We have spiked downward, which is fine because there was a big boom there. We have spiked downward in the graded PSA market, and now we're kind of at the plateau mark. And what do I expect is going to happen? Absolutely. I would expect a slow upward overall growth trend. Because guess what? The cards aren't getting printed again. They're not getting any easier to get. It's getting later in the game. They're getting older. And what happens when older minter cards are left on the market? They go up. It's that simple. They go up. Unless, again, the game dies, affecting the game. I don't know what can happen. That's a big variable, but in the next 20 years or so. But, again, that's getting a little sidetracked. At the moment, as long as the game is healthy, stable at the very least, that trend will continue to plateau, will continue to go up, for the most part, over time. Because, again, it's older cards. Look at Magic cards. They're the oldest of the old. They're older than Pokemon, and guess what? They continually go up. Even when the game goes on a decline, people are still buying Magic the Gathering cards. So, overall, guys, I guess what I'm trying to say here in this video is, a lot of people, I've heard comments saying, A, PSA graded cards are still way too expensive. B, from sellers, well, PSA isn't worth it anymore. Well, I mean, you can't hit gold. You cannot literally grade a common card and expect to make $50 to $100 on a common card. It just doesn't happen. We are in reality, guys. We are now hitting reality. We are hitting the reality of the market. Again, we are hitting the reality that has hit Magic, that has hit Pokemon, that has hit sports cards. You know, you can't expect to make a boatload of money grading cards on every card you grade. There has to be some inherent risk in the form of cash, in the form of capital, in the form of opportunity costs, in the form of holding onto the card, in the form of risk. There's a super huge risk when grading cards. You can't just say, well, grading cards, well, you know, everyone else is doing it. I'm just going to do it because, you know, everyone else is making a ton of money grading cards. That is totally false. Absolutely false. You don't know what grade you're getting. You don't know how much it's going to sell for. You don't know if anyone else has a stash of the same card out there, just sitting on a stash. There's so many different variables, but again, I think our expectations were set too high. The bar was set too high. People ask me specifically, they said, well, what do you think? You know, PSA cards are starting to decline in value. I say, I haven't personally seen a decline. I've seen overall a steady plateau in the past 6 to 8 months. You know, compared to 2 years ago when DDS Blue Eyes was a $2,000 card, then yeah, of course. But that's reasonable to expect, you know, because you can't have this expectation that when something is new on the market in the form of PSA graded Yu-Gi-Oh cards at the time, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it may be, that's a brand new section, a brand new segment of the Yu-Gi-Oh market, okay? So when that happens, it's kind of like a newborn baby. You don't know what's going to happen. It's like a stock where it's you know, it's a brand new stock. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's basically like throwing darts at a dartboard at that point. You can't expect right when something comes to fruition in its infancy in the form of PSA graded Yu-Gi-Oh cards that it's going to be able to sustain, it's going to be able to go up, it's going to be able to go down. At that point, you don't know. 3 years ago, PSA graded Yu-Gi-Oh cards, nobody had any idea what they're going to be worth. Nobody had any clue. Now we have a realistic vision. We've seen what happens when people list PSA cards, and there's now an option for the buyer. There's no longer monopolies. There's no longer Pop 1s or Population 1 PSA 10s all over the place. Now you have the sense of competition. And competition is good. Competition is great. I don't find this as a bad thing. Yes, values may have gone down, but it has opened up the choice option for consumers. It has opened up the competition for sellers, thus lowering prices for consumers a bit, to an extent. But again, it's healthy for the game. And I think, again, we've hit the point where people know what they have. They know what they should be grading. They know what they shouldn't be grading. They have reasonable expectations and say, well, if this doesn't come back at 10, if this comes back at 9, I'm not really going to make money on this. If this comes back at 8, 7, I'm going to lose money on this grading. You know, so is it worth it? And that's what you have to ask yourself. Now, all of a sudden, it's not just well, I have 1,000 Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I'm going to send them to PSA. Now, it's a matter of, which cards am I going to send? Why am I going to send them? Which cards are going to be the best options in the future? Which cards have the highest demand? Which cards have the highest opportunity for growth? That's what you're asking yourself when you're grading these cards. I mean, you don't want to grade cards from Secrets of Eternity, or what is it, the worst set ever? Secrets of Eternity? I think it's like a $30 booster box. Why would you grade cards from that set? You know, it's one of those things. If you like the cards, great. But if you're looking to make any money, like significant money doing that, you have a lot better options. And there are many sets, there are many cards individually, there are many opportunities in Yu-Gi-Oh! To make more money, especially with the old stuff. But when you're just grading cards to grade cards and thinking, I'm going to blindly submit these, I'm going to make money, everyone else is doing it, people will buy this, you have to tell yourself, well, wait a second. Why is someone going to buy my card when there's 1,408 other cards graded on eBay that they might like more? That's what we have to ask ourselves. We have to realize that this is the norm, and this is fine. This happens in everything. This happens in everything. There is healthy competition. It's a pick-and-choose world, like it is in the free market. And we just have to adapt. And we have to have reasonable expectations, and expect overall that the vintage card market will continue to see growth. I think this is the point where the market has stabilized, which is, again, a normal, fine thing, considering it's been about 3 years now. We now know what the market is. We now know what cards people want. We now know how hard it is or easy it is to get 10s, 9s, depending on what the card is. We now know a significant amount of the population report, which I don't like, again, as much, but we do at least have a basis to gauge values. on these cards. We have a significant track record of historical grading, of historical pricing, so now the prices will no longer fluctuate. We have historical data that can help us in the future gauge what we have, what to submit, what people will buy, why they buy it, and that's it. And now we can use this data to make our own decisions. If we're a submitter, if we're a seller, if we're a buyer, if we're a trader, we have this historical data to influence our decision making going forward. There will be overall probably less cards graded. I see more graded as well, but I think smarter grading. That's what I think is going to happen. People will be smarter with their grading. They're not going to expect to make tons of money on every PSA 10 they have. And that's what's going to happen. You know, whether people overvalue their cards or not, it's up to them. Whether people overpay for cards or not, it's up to them. But overall, in this market, we now know, and we have data that we didn't have 2 or 3 years ago. And having this will help the future growth of sales of the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Again, we're now hitting the plateau. And I think from now, we're going to have that very slow, steady growth in this game. Talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, not in Pokemon, not in Magic the Gathering, but overall, the prices in the market have stabilized, and now we have options, we have choices, and we will start to see the growth, in my opinion, that slow, steady growth, depending on the card. There's a lot of cards out there, and I have more discussions for you, but that's what's happening here. Not all PSA grading, you can't go and send 50,000 cards to PSA and say, I'm going to make money. You can't just blindly do that. You have to have a plan and an idea in mind. And so for those people saying, well, PSA is no longer worth it, that's fine. Send me the cards. I'll buy them. I'll buy them raw, and I'll grade them. The ones I like, the ones I want, the ones I think I can make good trades with and whatnot. So, yeah, in terms of a decline in the last 6 months, I don't see it. I've actually had maybe an increase in the last 6 months, believe it or not. So, yeah, without that, you know, I'm not sure what people are talking about. But, hey, we're at 17 minutes. It's been a way too long of a rant and a ramble and a discussion. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot me a comment. I'll appreciate it. Get back to you. Ideas, opinions, whatever it may be. Let me know. Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, signing out.